Hello and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to the channel if it is your first time here. My name is Jess and today I am back. I'm going to be doing a summer wrap up, so all the books that I read in the months of July and August. I took a very unplanned and unexpected break from filming and uploading content over the summer. It was various different things that I didn't see coming, and it resulted in me just not having time to sit and film or edit or upload or anything like that. But I am back. As I say, I'm going to do my wrap up now, and I'm really excited for some of the content that I have got coming up as well. So hope you stuck with me. Let's jump in and start talking about some books. I actually had a very mixed reading experience over July and August. Some books I liked and some books that were just a little bit of a miss for me. But yeah, let's just jump in and see where we go. So first up we have The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. This is an enemies to lovers office-based romance with a little bit of a grumpy sunshine trope thrown in as well. So we have Joshua and Lucy, who do not like each other and have been in a series of one-upmanship games since their companies merged, and everything comes to a head when a promotion is up for grabs. I don't know if this was a case of right book, wrong time, and I did mention it in one of the last vlogs that I uploaded before the summer, but this was a miss for me. I just did not gel with this book at all. It felt like it was about 200 pages too long in terms of what actually takes place in the story, and there was just nothing really very memorable about it for me. The characters were weak. I thought the plot was quite weak. The writing style made it feel like a really heavy book, which I don't think was necessarily the intention, especially because there wasn't really the plot to back it up. I didn't get it. I wanted to like it. It has a lot of the tropes that I enjoy in romance, but I gave it 2.5 stars. It just was not a book for me. Next, I had a hankering to reread a popular fantasy book, and I went for A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I actually vlogged my reading experience of this, so I won't talk in too much detail about my thoughts, but if you're not familiar, it's a fantasy retelling of Beauty and the Beast set with a world where fae exist, is probably the easiest way that I can describe it. We have our main character Feyre, who kills a fae and ends up being taken captive by a High Lord called Tamlin. And that's all I'm going to say. This is a series that I want to finish. I haven't read the final book, and so I wanted to dip my toe back into this world to see what I thought, because I have an up and down relationship with the writing of Sarah J. Maas. I love the world that she creates. I think she's really creative. I enjoy a lot of the characters that she writes about, but her writing style I find to be quite weak and repetitive, and that hadn't really changed for me. I remembered all the reasons that I really liked this first book and not what comes after, but the writing style and the issues that I have personally with the writing style had remained the same. So I think rather than doing a full reread of this series, I'll just skip to the final book and be able to tick this one off. I give it 4 stars. As I say, I enjoy these books for what they are, but I do have some issues with the writing style and the books that are in between. And I know it's a very unpopular opinion, but the character assassination of Tamlin that comes after this book I was never fully on board with. Next we have my book club's pick for July, which was Sea Witch by Sarah Henning. The theme that we were voting on was retellings, and this is the one that came out top, and it is an imagined origin story for the sea witch Ursula from The Little Mermaid. And I had high hopes for this book, but honestly it just lacked in every single aspect. It lacked in plot, it lacked in characters. It had the potential to be an incredibly dark, really interesting story, and it just never really got there. And what it ended up being was a very bland version of a story that felt like maybe it had been intended to be an adult book, and then someone came along and said, no, actually if you marketed this at a really young YA, you'd get far more interest in it. So they took out all the bits that were interesting, but you can still see the shadow of those things within the plot, but it just felt like you were missing something the entire time that you read it. I gave this one 2 stars. It just wasn't for me, and I don't even think that I could recommend it either. Even if you had a very young YA reader who wanted to pick up a book about mermaids, this wouldn't be a good option because the mermaids are almost an afterthought in the story. I truly felt that there was something missing with this book. It had all the potential, it had all the right structures in place. It just didn't come off in any way. I had slightly more success with my next couple of reads. The first was The Heatwave by Kate Riordan. This is a family drama thriller with a slow burner mystery at the heart of it, set in the south of France. At the very beginning of the book, we meet our main character Sylvie, who is returning to her former family home in the south of France following a fire, and she's bringing with her her youngest daughter Emma. The story goes back and forth between 2 periods in time. We have our present day, and then we have something that happened in the past which caused Sylvie to flee from her family home with her daughter, and we know right away that there is just something off about the whole dynamic. There's something that we don't quite know, but it is just very atmospheric and slow in the development of it, but it keeps it at just the right pace that you want to keep going and keep reading. And I really enjoyed this. I liked the setting, I liked the characters, I liked the slow reveal. The actual mystery itself is not anything groundbreaking, but it was enjoyable and entertaining, and it kept me guessing, and I was just always a little bit wrong-footed in what I thought was happening and then what actually was happening. So yeah, I gave this 4 stars. I thought it was great. It was a really good, easy summer read, and I would definitely recommend it. And then another book which I absolutely loved was the book club's pick for August, which was The Invisible Husband of Frick Island by Colleen Oakley. And whereas the first book that we started with was a case of perhaps right book, wrong time, this was a case of right book, right time, because it's a contemporary and it's set on a small island in Chesapeake Bay called Frick Island, which is based on a real island but actually is a fictional one in this book. And I could tell you all the things that are off with this book. I could tell you all the things that are problematic with this book. I could tell you all the things that are weak in this book, but I didn't mind about any of that. I just really enjoyed it. It was light, it was quirky, it was quaint, it was fun. It touched on some heavier topics, but just the right measure. I could really see this book being like a Hallmark movie or a series on Netflix or something. I just really enjoyed it. I liked most of the characters, I liked the setting, I liked the plot, etc, etc. I could waffle on and on, but I will give you some context for what this book is about. I just really enjoyed it. It was just the perfect book for me to get lost in when I read it. So yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. So we have our 2 main characters. We have, oh my word, I've forgotten his name, Anders. We have Anders, who is a journalist for a small time paper on the mainland, and he dreams of having a hit podcast. And then we have Piper, who lives on Frick Island, who very sadly loses her husband when he's out on a boat in a storm. And then one day Piper wakes up and just acts like her husband has returned, and everybody on the island, because they love Piper so much, they just go along with it and pretend with Piper that her husband has returned. And then Anders goes along to cover a different story on the island, and he uncovers this story instead. And so we're just following along with what happens. I could gush about this book. As I said, I really enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend this book if you want something that is light and entertaining, a gentle story that touches on some heavier topics such as grief and mental health, but has a very warm and fluffy and happy ending. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I will definitely be looking up Colleen Oakley's other books for when I just need something that makes me feel warm and fuzzy. Highly recommend. Next we have Sister Song by Lucy Holland, which was a much anticipated read for me, and I had incredibly high hopes for this book, and I think you know where I'm going and what I'm going to say. This is not only a mythological reimagining, retelling, but it's also set in one of my favourite time periods to read about, that kind of King Arthur, Saxon Roman crossover time period. I really enjoy reading books in that setting, and I had such high hopes for this book, and there are many things that are good about it. I liked the setting, I liked the writing style, I liked for the most part the story. It's atmospheric, it has fairly decent representation, there are several very unexpected twists and turns if you aren't familiar with the origin story of this book. There are lots of things to enjoy about it. There was just something that was off for me, and I think it is to do with our three sisters and the way that they are depicted. So I thought that I was going in to read a book about these three sisters, this hint of magic, these untouched powers, and they were going to kind of come into their own and be really strong, kick-ass characters that we could really get behind, and they are self-centered and angsty and vapid for 95% of the book, and it was really incredibly draining to read about. And even though the majority of them get the majority of the three get a redemptive moment where they kind of do something for someone else beyond themselves, it just wasn't enough to save them, in my opinion. Probably being slightly unfair because one of our characters, Keen, does start their redemptive arc slightly earlier in the book, but honestly it wasn't enough to carry it for me. I just was exhausted reading about it and really wanted to tell them to get over themselves and focus on other people. And maybe that's me being unfair, maybe that is representative of teenage girls, but goodness me, it was not what I expected to read. I gave it 3.5 stars, and that is largely because when I went into this book I just read The Invisible Husband of Frigg Island. I was on a high, I was feeling very forgiving and generous towards the book, but honestly it just got harder and harder to think kind thoughts about it as we went through the story. And I think it is a mixture of the fact that I was very much anticipating loving this book because it ticked a lot of my boxes in terms of what I thought it was going to be about, and then actually the delivery of it. There will be some people who love this book, and I completely understand why, but for me it just didn't hit the spot, and I was ultimately disappointed. And then I'm not going to talk in any great detail about the final 4 books that I read because I have a vlog coming next week which is a new challenge and will feature all 4 of these books, but I'm just going to tell you very briefly what they were about and what they were. So we have Careless by Kirsty Capes. This is contemporary fiction about a young girl living in foster care who finds herself pregnant, and it's very much her experience, her coming of age, her deciding what she wants to do as a result of where she finds herself. So that's the first one. Then we have Build Your House Around My Body by Violet Cooper Smith, which is a genre bending book that I have no idea how to describe, and if you watch the vlog you will see my thoughts unfurling in rapid time. I thought it was historical fiction. It's not. It's magical realism, fantasy, historical, literary, all kinds of things thrown in, where we have 2 Vietnamese women who go missing 20 years apart, and honestly I don't have the time to try to explain to you everything that goes down in this book. Do go and watch the vlog if you're interested. It was a wild ride. Then we have This One Sky Day by Leonie Ross, which was again a book that I had got the synopsis of it completely wrong. This is fantasy set on an island called Papisho, where everybody is born with something called cores, which is like an additional ability. So we have one character who can add flavorings to food as they are cooking. We have another who's a healer. People are born with extra limbs or organs on the outside of their bodies and things things like that. Some of the skills are useful, some of them are just kind of quirky and unique, and we have two lovers who have been separated, and we're sort of following various different characters on this island. So there's that one. And then the final one we have is Remote Sympathy, which is World War II historical fiction. Again, we're following a number of different characters, but it's set on the outskirts of Buchenwald, I want to say, Buchenwald concentration camp or work camp. And it's a book that is very, very full of imagery, and the writing style is really quite something. And yeah, not going to say too much more. Do go and watch the vlog, sorry to tease, but talking great detail about my reading experiences of those 4 books, I would literally just be repeating myself. So they are all of the books that I physically read over the summer. And then I did also listen to The Wizards of Once by Cressida Cowell, which is a children's book. We went on a couple of different day trips over the summer holidays and we listened to that as a family, and I really, really enjoyed that. The audiobook is narrated by David Tennant and it is done so well. It's highly, highly entertaining. We basically have a forest, and there are 2 camps. There are the warriors who are afraid of magic and want to destroy magic, and then we have the wizards who are seeking to protect themselves and other magical creatures. So we have sprites and giants and various other magical creatures, and we have a character from the wizard camp who meets a character from the warrior camp. They're kind of thrown together one day, and a whole series of things unfolds involving a magical spoon, a magical sword, a witch king. There's just all kinds of adventure and hijinks and all kinds, and it's just a really, really fun story. As I say, I would highly recommend the audiobook. I gave it 4.5 stars. James and I, not so much the kids, but James and I were laughing out loud at many, many points in the telling of the story. It was really good. If you've got kids that are kind of 6, 7, 8-ish particularly, I think this would make a great bedtime story to read as a family. My kids enjoyed it. They are 11 and 13. But yeah, I think they're just slightly outside of the target age, but really, really funny, very enjoyable, very, you know, misadventure, coming of age, friendship, all that kind of thing is in it. So would highly recommend that. And that is it for now. As I say, I'm hopefully going to be back into the normal routine of uploading videos, so do watch out for those. Let me know what your favourite book that you read over the summer was. I always love to chat more with you in the comments. As always, thank you very much for watching. I hope that you are all keeping safe and well. I hope that you're all looking forward to going into autumn. I know that I am. I am definitely an autumn person, so really looking forward to all the vibes that come with that. But for now, thank you very much. Take care, and I'll see you soon.